everybody, Mike Iaconelli here. Welcome to a brand new In the Shop. And today, we got a really good one for you. In today's shop, we're going to be talking about my top 3 ways to rig the Berkley PowerBait MaxScent worm. It's a killer. We're going to give you 3 really cool ways to rig this worm to make them bass go crazy. It really does. This worm is special. It makes them go crazy. And we're going to give you 3 ways to rig it. Let me start by saying there are way more than 3 ways you can rig that hitworm. But I'm going to give you these 3 that I consider they're my top 3 methods. I want to start by talking about the Berkley PowerBait hitworm and sort of go over what makes this worm special. And then we'll get into the 3 rigging methods, okay? First off, we've got 2 really nice sizes that fit the profile of whatever forage you're trying to match. We've got a 4.5, and that's a great size, guys, when you're imitating smaller forage. It's a great size. If you're fishing in a place that has smaller bass, it's a great size. And it's also, the 4.5 is a great size when that water gets really, really clear, okay? So a 4.5, and then we've got that 7-inch. And the 7-inch Berkley PowerBait MaxScent hitworm is a great size when that forage is much bigger, right? When you're trying to forage match larger forage, that's a great one. Also, it's a great one when you're fishing around larger size bass. And last but not least, just like that 4.5 was great in clean water, that 7-inch really excels in stained to dirty to muddy water, okay? But I really want to go over, I want to show you the worm and give you some of the features that make this thing a little different than the average straight tail worm. Guys, you know it. Go to Tackle Warehouse. Flick through the straight tail worm section. Dude, there's 50, 60 different straight tail worms. But this one's definitely, it's special, okay? First thing, it is MaxScent. It's PowerBait MaxScent. And because of that, guys, the smell is very, very unique. To put it mildly, it stinks. Dude, that scent on all the MaxScent products, but especially the hitworms, is a drawing agent to the bait. And then once that fish eats it, you could literally let him swim around with it till he poops it out. I'm not kidding. If you fished other MaxScent, you know what I'm talking about, right? So I love the fact that it's got that MaxScent built into it. Number 2, because it's MaxScent, it's real soft, flimsy, and it's almost like wet or moist. And when you go in the pack, a lot of times you're like, man, that's wet. And it is. And I love that for 2 reasons. The one is it makes it extremely soft and flexible, even softer than regular PowerBait. It's very, very soft. Soft bait means better action, right? The other thing is the MaxScent colors are dulled down. That's the best way I can describe it to you. Here's a green pumpkin. Here's a smoke black and gold flake. Here's this natural, almost earthworm color. And when you look at the colors of MaxScent compared to like regular bright soft plastics, the colors are dull. They're not shiny. They're flat and dull. And I believe that it's a really, in a lot of situations, that flat color is better because it's a more natural mimic of what the forage looks like, right? So I love the flat colors. But when we look at this worm specifically, and this is the 4.5, you're going to see a couple really, really cool features to the bait itself. Number one, the one that I love the best is that what I call bulbous tail, right? If you take a look at that, you can see that that tail is very bulbous. It almost sort of reminds me of like a rattlesnake tail. And when you look at that tail, it's fat and it's bulbous. But all of a sudden, it goes from fat and bulbous to skinny. It tapers, right? Same thing on the 7-inch. Fat tail, but all of a sudden, tapers thin. And when it tapers thin, it comes back to another fat section. That's the worm collar or worm band, what a lot of people call it. And then at the head of the worm, it tapers again. Gets a little thinner down here with a flat nose to it, a flat surface on the front end. So starting with the tail, the combination of that bulbous tail and that instant thin taper creates a lot of unique action, guys. And as I get into the 3 ways to rig it, you're going to see in every one of these rigging methods that tail activates. That bulbous tail comes alive, and it's really a key feature on why this bait gets bit. When you follow that taper back up, very unique for the hitworm to get fat and then thin again toward the nose. And that second taper not only provides action in itself, but it gives you a spot to rig the terminal tackle, right? The hooks, the jig head, and you'll see that as we get into the rigging. So very unique shape, guys, very unique shape. Real quick before we get into these riggings, just on size and color one more time. Guys, if I'm fishing in places where the forage is little, I use the 4.5. If I'm around ultra clear water, I use the 4.5. And if I'm fishing for smallmouth, I typically will use the 4.5. The 7-inch, if I'm fishing for bigger fish, if I'm fishing in more stained to dirty water, and if the forage I'm trying to match is big, this is the one I throw. Colors, guys, I keep it super, super simple. I carry maybe 5, 6 colors of the hitworm. And, you know, I carry green pumpkin shades, watermelon shades. And in green pumpkin, there's green pumpkin red, there's green pumpkin black flake, green pumpkin magic. There's a bunch of different green pumpkins. But green pumpkins, watermelons, that one that's like almost smoke or pearlish smoke, I love for when it's more of a shad imitation. The nightcrawler color, I call it the nightcrawler color, almost looks like a faded morning dawn. If you're a big fan of that color called morning dawn, it almost looks like that. And then last but not least, guys, straight black. I love the straight black hitworm. So keep the colors ultra simple, match the forage, you're good to go. All right, guys, let's get into it. And I'm going to give you my top 3 ways to rig the hitworm. Number one, and when this worm came out, it was 100% a no-brainer. Like I instantly said to myself, that's going to be a great worm for a shaky head. And it is. Guys, absolutely has become one of my favorite worms ever to fish on a shaky head. I'm actually fishing on a lot of different kinds of shaky heads. The kinds you just thread on. There's some shaky heads out there that have an offset hook, like a rugby style shaky head. I love those. And then there's the good old shaky head that has a little post or a spring on it. And you'll see a lot of these heads. Berkley Fusion has one, just has a little, like a post or a spring. And the nice thing about it, I already mentioned it, but that hit worm has a flat nose to it. So back in the day when I used other worms, I'd actually bite it off, spit it out, or cut it off to make that flat end. You don't need to do that. So I'm basically just on this one, I'm going to get it and screw it straight into that flat section. And then when I do that, guys, I just do my normal Texas rig. And I like that because I can now fish this bait through a lot of different cover and not worry about getting it snagged. But when we rig it, just make sure that the bait is straight, right? We want that body to be nice and straight, okay? The magic of the hit worm on shaky head is that it's a dual action bait, or in other words, there's 2 times where the fish are going to go crazy for this worm, okay? So I'll fish this worm, I'll make my cast toward where I think the fish are living or toward the cover, the structure. And when it's falling on that initial cast, I always let it fall on a semi-slack line. Guys, when this hit worm's falling, look at that shape, right? Tapered at the top, fatter in the middle, skinny taper to that bulbous tail. When it's falling on semi-slack, controlled slack line on a shaky head, guys, it just wanders. It just wanders around as it falls. It literally is like a bait fish, crawfish, bluegill that's lost, that's dying, that's wandering to the bottom. 50% of the times when you fish that hit worm on a shaky head, it's going to get bit before it ever gets to the bottom. It's crazy how many fish I catch as this bait's falling. The other 50%, the other half, kicks in after the bait touches down, okay? So I throw it out there, I let it fall, I'm watching my slack line, I'm watching that controlled slack. If I watch it fall and it bellows out, hits the bottom, the line gets flat, it's hit, right? Once this hit worm hits the bottom, it does something really, really magical, which is nose down, tail up, and when I shake that rod tip, guys, you can almost see it here, just be holding the worm. There it goes. That's a good look at it right there, guys. That's just me shaking it. When that worm hits the bottom and it sits nose down, tail up, and I just take my rod tip and shake it, guys, that bulbous tail just goes crazy. It's just crazy action in the water. The 50% that hit on the fall, it's a reaction. It looks natural. The fish are coming up and eating it. But when that thing hits the bottom and standing nose down, tail up, and that tail's shaking in the fish's face, he can't take it. Looks a lot like something, a bait fish or a sculpin or a goby or a little bluegill or an eel or a lamprey on the bottom picking, you know, like eating something on the bottom. And that tail movement drives them crazy, okay? So my number one favorite way to rig the hitworm, and both sizes, the 4.5, but especially the 7. Probably one of my favorite sizes, the fish on the Shaky Head is the 7. Great way to catch a lot of fish, whether it's on the fall or on the bottom, okay? Number two favorite way to rig the Berkley PowerBait MaxScent hitworm is, you know this one, guys, on a drop shot. On a drop shot, okay, guys? On a drop shot. Real quick, in case there's a couple people watching that don't know what the drop shot is, it's going to be a hook tied in line with a length of leader below it to your weight. So the weight's on the bottom, the hook's in line above the weight. And the great thing about a drop shot, you can almost see it here, is that it keeps the bait off the bottom and it keeps it horizontal off the bottom, okay? So my number two favorite way to rig that hitworm is on a drop shot. I like both sizes for drop shotting a hitworm, but specifically that 4.5 is an amazing size, okay? For the hook on our drop shot, we can rig it two ways. We could use a medium wire, straight shank, or even an offset hook, something smaller, 1/0, 2/0, 3/0, depending on the hitworm size. And we can rig it Texas style on the drop shot. Great way to do it if there's cover around, if you're fishing around brush or grass. I like the Texas rigging. But my number one way to drop shot this is by nose hooking it. I'm going to give you a good look at it right there. I'm going to just nose hook that bait. And real simple. I like a number 1 or a number 2 drop shot style hook, split shot, drop shot style hook. This is a little number 2 fusion. And I always want that hook point facing up. And all I'm going to do, remember what I said, key to this bait, besides the scent and the color, is that bulbous tail and the 2 tapers, the one at the tail and the taper at the head. So literally, guys, I'm just going to nose hook it. So I just go into the hitworm about a 1/16 or 1/18 of an inch. I pop it through, and that's it. I just nose hook it. But guys, that taper on the front, that taper from thin to thick and then ultra thin to the tail is what makes this hitworm different on a drop shot, okay? So typically when I'm fishing more horizontal cover, horizontal structure, like a flat that's all 10 feet deep, or a slow tapering point that goes from 5 to 15, but very slow. If it's horizontal, I prefer the Shaky Head hitworm. But guys, when the cover, the bottom, the contours get steep, quick drop, sharp drop, a channel bend, a bluff, a big drop off, bridge pilings, deep docks, something that's more vertical, riprap, a dam. When it's more vertical, I prefer the drop shot on the hitworm. And, you know, for this one, I do something a little different, which is less action imparted in the bait. Shaky Head, oh yeah, guys, you heard me say, I'm shaking my rod tip to activate that bulbous tail, nose down, tail up. But on the drop shot, guys, I tend to make the cast, let it get to the bottom, boom, hits the bottom, the weight's on the bottom. This thing sits above the weight horizontally, naturally, right? Like a minnow or a bait fish or a bluegill or a shiner. Most of them just hover, right, off the bottom, and in the water column, up off the bottom, they hover. That's what this bait does. But because of that front taper and that rear taper to that bulbous tail, I just barely shake it and then stop. Barely shake it and stop. I really let this bait flux and almost subtly move on its own. And it will do that because of those tapers. Because it's the water pressures affecting the thinner parts different than the thicker part, it almost moves on its own, okay? You throw in current to that, guys, if you're watching this and you fish rivers or reservoirs that have some kind of current, dude, that thing moves all by itself, okay? Love, love, love the MaxScent hitworm on a drop shot. Not just smallmouths either, guys. Spotted bass, largemouth, phenomenal way to rig the hitworm. All right, last but not least, my number 3 favorite ways to rig the hitworm. And I saved this one for last on purpose, guys, because out of the 3, this one does a lot of work for me. A lot. I think that this third method is a hybrid of the shaky head and the drop shot. It's real versatile. You can fish it in a lot of different depths, from ultra shallow to ultra deep. And it really does give the fish a different look than a shaky head or a Ned or a drop shot. It's a completely different look. My number 3 favorite method for rigging the MaxScent hitworm, Nico style. Nico style, guys. Love, love, love this. Honestly, I would say that it's almost always tied on one of my rods. Like, seriously, that's saying something. It's almost always tied on one of my rods, and it is a Nico style rigging for the hitworm. All right, I'll go over the whole thing for you, and then I'll show you why Nico rigging it just drives them nuts, because it's doing something completely different on the bottom. Okay, first things first, guys. Remember, again, I sound like a broken record. The great thing about that hitworm, besides those tapers, we're going to talk about that in a second, is that head of it, it's got a flat spot on it. So first thing we want on our Neko rig is a nail weight. Guys, I use lead, tungsten, whatever you want to use. But I like to carry, I carry weights from about a 32nd of an ounce all the way up to about a quarter. But more often than not, I really, 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 guys, I love the 16th ounce in shallower water, the 8th ounce in a little deeper water, and then I go heavier from that if I start to get really, really deep, okay? But 16th or an 8th, that 8th size is great. And we're just going to get the nail, that nail weight, and we're going to put it straight into the head of that worm. I just like to push it, make sure it's nice and straight. And I'd like to leave, whether it's the kind with the little round spot at the end, or if it's just a regular straight nail, I actually like to leave a little bit of the surface of that nail weight sticking out, okay? As I get into what it does on the bottom, you're going to get it more. But nail weight, in the fatter end, and put it in and leave a little bit of it sticking out, okay? Number two, seeing if I have one over there, but number two is an O-ring or a collar or a band. Lots of really good ones out there now, guys. Go to Tackle Warehouse, go to the terminal tackle section, look for wacky rigging tools. You're going to see some that have collars, some that are just the O-rings. You're going to see some that are more like bands. A lot of good options out there. But that's just a traditional O-ring. And I want to tell you about the positioning. The most important thing when I'm rigging this Nico style is the positioning of that band. Notice, guys, it's not in the middle. I don't want that band dead in the middle. If I was weightless, wacky rigging, I'd want it in the middle. But for Nico rigging, you want it below center, not quite 3/4 of the way down, okay? But on the MaxScent hitworm, remember, it's bulbous tail, super skinny, then it gets fat, then it tapers again. Right where that fat section starts to taper, just below the egg sac, is about where you want that band, okay? So you want it on the bottom third of that worm, okay? Just make sure you use a band that's nice and tight. Last but not least, guys, your hook. You can use the same hook you used for drop shotting. A number 1 or number 2 drop shot, wacky rig, split shot style hook. If I'm in open water, guys, I will use just a regular exposed hook. If I get around cover, you can get that same style hook that has a little guard on it. Some of them are fluorocarbon, some are wire, some are plastic. But if you're fishing around cover, that little guard will help you fish it through the grass or the brush or the docks or whatever. All right. Last but not least, guys, I'm going to rig this thing with this hook. Oh, and again, sizes on the hook, number 1 or number 2. The number 2 for me, I like on the 4.5. The number 1, I like on the 7-inch. And we're going to rig that under that band, okay? But I want to make sure that when you rig it, you always want the hook point facing up, okay? So when I go under that band, I go into the MaxScent a little bit and I push it out. There's what it looks like, guys. I always want that hook point facing up, especially if they get it on the way down. When I set the hook, I want to be setting with a hook that's facing up, not down, okay? I want the leverage point to be correct, okay? Let me remind you, before I get into the action, that this isn't wacky rigging. If we were wacky rigging, it would be in the middle of the bait, and it would be perpendicular to the hitworm, right? That's perpendicular. But we want to go parallel with the bait under that collar, okay? And that's Nico rigging, okay? So perpendicular with the bait, not parallel with the bait, not perpendicular to the bait, okay? Just want to make sure everybody knows that. All right, now here's the magic, and this is why I tell you, out of the 3, this one's my favorite, is it has a very, very unique action on the fall. But once it hits the bottom, guys, the magic really, really happens. Like the Shaky Head, on the fall, the Neko Rig will fall aimlessly, but even more erratic than the Shaky Head. You know, the Shaky Head fell erratically, but it was kind of sliding in a path. When the Neko Rig hitworm falls, it really falls erratically. You know, just kind of wherever it's catching water. And it never falls the same way twice, which is really cool. About 40% of your bites, I click my bail, I throw over to the stump, I throw over to that bald spot in the grass, I skip it under a dock. About 40% of the bites will happen as it's falling, right? Look at that weight in the nose. That weight's pulling it. That body's catching it. The water, it's falling in different directions. About 40% of the time, they'll eat it before it ever hits the bottom. Remember, like the Shaky Head, let it fall on a controlled slack line. So if one eats it, you're going to see the line go thunk. You'll see the line jump. You'll see the line get tight. You'll feel it, okay? Slack line to let it fall aimlessly. But once it hits the bottom, guys, this is the magic of this bait. You're going to get a dual action bait on the bottom. Just like the Shaky Head, boom, hits the bottom. It kind of sits at this angle where that nail weight that we left exposed is on the bottom. Your pull point is right here. And when you start to shake, lightly twitch that rod tip, you're going to get two unique things happening. The first one, guys, because we left that weight sticking out of that hitworm, it's going to be tapping the bottom. Harder bottom, gravel, rock, clay, sand, stump, woods, concrete. It's pecking. Every time it pecks, it's a little bit of silt, dust, smoke coming off the bottom. Dude, looks exactly like something feeding on the bottom. A minnow, a shad, a shiner, a dace, a crawfish, a worm, an actual worm, right? So you have the head pecking. I call it a pecking motion. But also, because look at that pull point, a little below center, lightly twitching, lightly shaking. You have this other section that's in front of it, dangling. Look at that. There's that bulbous tail shaking. There's that taper. So you have pecking and the tail shaking, draped over, shaking at the same time. Guys, that motion of the pecking and then that tail just kind of flailing drives them nuts. It's MaxScent. They got the smell. It's wet. It's moist. It's super soft and just has tons of action. They see that. They come and look at it. They smell it. They eat it. They won't let go of this thing. I'm telling you could let them run for an hour and they wouldn't let go of it. Neko rigging is so great because you can skip it under stuff. You can bomb cast it to deep water. I can fish it ultra shallow when they're spawning. I fished this thing around the heaviest of stumps in Louisiana and Florida. Very versatile, guys. So number 3, my favorite out of all of them, is Neko rigging the hit one. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this edition of In the Shop, talking all about the Berkley PowerBait MaxScent hit worm. It's a great worm. It's one of those shapes from afar. It looks just like a straight tail. It is not. It's its own unique animal. Give it a try. Lots of ways to rig it, but these 3 are my top 3 favorite ways to rig that hit worm. Guys, if you like what you're watching, if you like these videos, please do me a favor. Subscribe to the channel. We got a new piece of content dropping every single week. If you're already a subscriber, tell your buddies, tell your fishing friends about the channel. It's Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We're here to hopefully help you learn something and ultimately catch a few more fish. I hope you enjoyed this one, talking about 3 ways to rig the hitworm. Bye.